Welcome back to the DTF Printing Mastery class. I'm your host Jay with Elegant Edits and Pop DTF. And this job came in from a client who needs all of the white removed from the image with the exception of the white fill that's inside of the words tow trucks. So what we would actually need to do for this is double click a layer if you have a job that's similar. And now we want to click and drag to this area that says create new layer. We want to hide the old layer. And now what we need to do is actually select any area of white here on the screen and go to select similar. Now what has just happened is Photoshop has actually selected all of the white within the image, but remember we need to delete all of the white from the image with the exception of the fill that's in the words tow trucks. So next we can go and select our zoom tool, or you can hit Z on your keyboard so that we can see a little bit better here. Now you can also hold the space bar and it toggles this hand tool here. And when we hold the space bar, we can toggle this hand tool. Now we're going to actually select the magic wand tool again, and we're going to hold the Alt key, and we're just going to press inside of all of the fill within the words tow truck. So we're holding the Alt key and we're going to select, and it'll actually deselect this. We want to keep this selected here because the inner fill of the O should actually be part of the background. So we still want to remove that, but we're keeping Alt pressed and held, and we're just selecting on the inside of each of these. Lastly, all we'll need to do is to just hit delete on the keyboard, and I like to hit delete one more time, and this will ensure that there are no more white edges along these the curves here. So that looks good enough for me. Now we can actually compare this to the image behind us, and the way we can tell that all of these are transparent is due to the checker pattern here, and that's the representation of transparent pixels. This is the image we started with, and this is what we have. Next we can hit Control D on the keyboard, or you would actually go up to select and deselect, but we chose the keyboard command Control D. Next, all we need to do is go to File and Save As, and we can just say Save As and then V2 or version 2, and we can save the PSD or the Photoshop document file, or we can just simply save this as a PNG to maintain the file's transparency. Save it, and then we can send this back to the client. Now, if we wanted to take this a step further, just to ensure that all of the white is removed from the image, what we could do is create a new layer. So we'll click here. We will click and drag this beneath all of the other layers here. And what we will want to do is choose our paint bucket tool, and we can do any sort of color, which I'll just use pink. And then we can hit Z on our keyboard to zoom in to actually see. Now, some of these areas technically aren't white, but I would imagine that they would want these areas removed here. So what we can do with this is actually hit Z or press the Z key to access our zoom magnifying glass, and then we will press Alt and zoom out. Then we can just click to zoom in. Next, what we can do is choose our magic wand tool, and let's see how well we can actually select this. But before we do this, we need to go ahead and duplicate this layer. That way, if we make a mistake, we don't have to keep hitting undo. We can just delete this layer and revert back to an older version of it. So now hit Z on the keyboard so I can see a little bit better. And with this will allow us to use this magic wand tool to select roughly each pixel if we wanted to zoom all the way in and do that. And we can actually lower the tolerance on this if we wanted to. So if we find that it's selecting too many pixels, what we could do is change the tolerance and lower that. So it will actually select less and less pixels as we lower the tolerance. And I can also, if I wanted to, I could hold Alt and click to remove these. And if we didn't want to do that, sometimes these things won't be perfect. So what I would do in this case is I would actually choose the quick selection tool, and we can lower the size of this brush, and you can also hit the open and close brackets on the keyboard. There we go, to increase or decrease the size here. We're on the correct layer. Or let's try our magnetic lasso tool. We can actually select this pixel individually. Hit delete. Now we can move on, and we hit Control D, Z on the keyboard to zoom in, and we can stick with the magnetic lasso tool. So any pixel that is larger any pixel that is lighter than this dark gray color, we will actually end up just using the magnetic lasso tool and deleting these. And I guess I'll do this one here as well. And the further you zoom in, the more control you actually have, or at least the more control it feels like you have here. And there are many different ways you could actually do this. This is just the way that seems easier to me. So we can actually go in, and if we wanted to, we could actually do the same thing that we did with the white, but the problem we'll have is if any of these values end up being closer to this color. So we can also try that. So we can go and use our magnetic lasso tool again. We can trace these pixels, and what it will attempt to do is, oh, and let's say you go outside of the bounds, what you could do is hit delete on the keyboard, and it will always delete the most recent point that was created with the magnetic lasso tool. So I made a mistake there. I'm hitting Control Alt Z, and then we can press Alt to remove the selection. Now we can go to select similar, and see it starts to select areas that we actually want to keep in the design. So this wouldn't be a good option. And so I do like when we get jobs like this that's not as simple and straightforward, because with design and also adjusting, which we aren't really designing anything here, but with some of these things, there's so many nuances to this that it won't be just clear, cut, and dry. And you'll have to actually use critical thinking in order to figure out what's going to be the best way to get the job done. And I kind of value that. Some things take a little bit of patience and time, and we just have to kind of work with what we have. But I like utilizing many different resources in order to achieve desired effects and results. And we want the fastest result, but sometimes it takes a little bit of patience and also due diligence in knowing that you will actually finish the task if you just trust the process. I don't like this selection here, so I'm going to come back. Alright, so I'm hitting delete on the keyboard as I mentioned before. It's actually snapping to each point. And I'm pressing Z and then Alt, holding Alt to zoom in and out as needed. Alright, we'll speed this up here a bit. And what we could also do is just select some of the lighter values, and then we can keep it isolated within a particular selection. So now that we have these pixels selected, what I can do is go to select similar, and then what I can do is choose our marquee tool and then hold Alt. And what that would do is deselect any of the other parts of the image that we don't want to be removed. Hit delete and Control D to deselect. So that's refined a little bit more of this. And I could actually keep doing this if I wanted to. I can select more of these pixels. And what I'm doing is right now I'm selecting a range of pixels that I want to be considered and selected. Okay, I think that's good. Z and Alt to zoom out. Select similar. And now we can select our marquee tool again, hold Alt. And we would basically be selecting any areas that we would like to be basically protected from deletion, if that makes a little bit more sense. So now it's selected all of these lighter areas here, and we can hit delete again, and it further refines the edges of the image. Now we can hit Control D. And here we go. Now if we wanted to take it a step further, what we could do is copy this layer, duplicate the layer, and we can make it to where we select a certain part of the image, Go a little bit wider here, or taller. And then we can hit layer via copy. This creates a new layer. And from there we can double click and do color overlay and select black. And what that will do is bring some of the fidelity back to this image that we lost from deleting it. So it's difficult to see it from far away, but this is what it looks like when we keep the layer underneath. So we get a little bit more, it just looks a little bit more crisp the way it was originally sent. And if we wanted to, we could hold Control and select both of these layers. We can right click and hit merge layers. So this was the original image. And now we can tell a distinct difference between the two. I hope this video has benefited you in some way. Again, I'm your host Jay with Elegant Edits and Pop DTF. Thank you for being a part of the DTF Printing Mastery class, and we'll see you in the next one.